I'm Logan Crawford, and right now on Spotlight, we're exploring the riveting memoir, I Wish I Lived My Life Deliberately. It's written by Patric Leedom. This amazing book embarks on an inspiring journey of a man who dared to dream, confront his realities, and carve a path filled with meaningful experiences. Dr. Leedom shares his adventures from his early acts of independence to his leadership roles and profound insights into the human condition, inviting us to reflect on our own life's purpose. We're delighted to have this very talented author join us here today on Spotlight, and we ask viewers like you to support writers like him by subscribing to our channel and by purchasing his remarkable book. The links are below this interview. Dr. Leedom, great to have you back on Spotlight today.
Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Your life, your early life in particular, was marked by an unusual amount of freedom and independence. Tell us how you
Yes.
think these experiences shaped your life and your belief in the phrase, I believe I can do it.
Yeah. Yes. I think that's uh, my mother never babysat or never was around children. So when I was born, what do I do with this? And she kind of said, the faster you can grow up, the happier I'll be. It's like the first grade. She showed me the 12 blocks down Reading Road to the school, and one time, and then if I lost my bus money, I had to walk the 12 blocks back and forth. No big deal. And by 8 o'clock, by age 8, my mother would give me a couple dollars. I'd get on the city bus. I'd go downtown Cincinnati and pick out a movie for myself. um, get home at like 11:30 or whatever. At age 9, I was messing around Xavier football stadium, and this big guy says, "Hey, kid, yeah, want a job? What? Making popcorn, running concessions. Well, let me run home. I'll just tell my mother what I'm doing." I worked every football game the whole season, making popcorn, running money back and forth. At the end of the game, they put me in a corner with a cardboard box full of coin. I wrapped all that, got home about 11:30. My mother was proud of me. I'm working. So, yes, I've had many unusual things, and I guess I got confidence. I believe I can.
Exactly, exactly. Such a different era. I grew up in a similar era where at a young age we could go downtown on our own. I remember I'd be like 8 years old and eating breakfast at chock full of nuts by myself. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah, if you did that today, I think somebody would call the cops and say, hey, there's a kid in here without the parents. So it's crazy how over supervised children are today. I mean, if you're going to
Helicopter
grow as a
mothers.
person, you need that freedom, don't you think?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, we had the only parameters my mother gave us was you couldn't go past this mailbox. You had to be home by the time the street lights were on. And
Mhm.
that was it. We didn't have a telephone attached to us. Your mother would call out the window if she was looking for you. You know, it's
Yeah.
a different era, a different age. But with something, gained, something's lost, right?
hmm
Yeah.
Well, it got to the point where I was a starving college student at UCLA. If anybody asked me, "Oh, can you fix a broken window?" Yeah, I can do that. Never
Right.
have before, but
But you felt like could do it, or you could figure out a way to do it. If somebody
yes,
gave you the opportunity, you
yes.
pounced and you got it done. Your life has been very, very varied. You've had a bunch of different experiences working in construction, advising in academia. Tell us a little
Yes.
bit about the balance between dreaming big and confronting the realities of life and what those early jobs meant to you.
Well, uh, when I was born, my mother's father created a college account in a local bank. And so that it was planted in my mind that you will go to college. So I worked my way through school. I mean, I listened to old men and said, nobody ever helped me. I did it all by myself. I thought, well, I can do that too.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yes. Um, and when I say I believe I can, it wasn't just foolish. It wasn't just in the dark. I'd look at it and say, I think I know enough, or I know who to ask to
Yeah.
help me with that.
Exactly,
So,
exactly. Knowing who to turn to for help, who to turn to
Yes.
for guidance is really, really important as well. And it was a different era too. You could work your way through college. College was
Yes.
maybe a
Yes,
thousand
I did.
dollars, a couple $1,000 a year.
Yeah.
Now college is 40, $50,000 a year.
Yeah.
But I never even dreamed of living away at college. I used to commute to college and work after
Yeah.
school. And, it sounds like, it's a generation or so or a decade or so behind
Yeah.
you, but it was a
When I
similar
was at
kind of upbringing.
UCLA, the tuition was $88 a semester. And when I was at San Francisco State, it was $48 a semester.
Amazing, amazing. We need to get it back to that again today.
Yes.
So everybody can afford to go to college and not have to take out what amounts to a mortgage to get an
Right.
education, right?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Tell us a little bit about how you view leadership as a significant role in your book and how that's so important and how your approach to leadership has evolved over time, especially through your service in the U.S. Navy and in academia.
Right. Well, even when I was a small child, like 6, 7, or 8, parents always said, Patrick, you're in charge. You make sure these kids get back in time for dinner. Yes, ma'am, I will. Then I went to military school and I learned how to do homework. And pretty soon I was the academic leader of my class, which meant I was also the military leader of my class. So that was heavy leadership. I became sergeant of the platoon. I became the inspector of the dormitory to make sure all the rooms were clean and beds were made.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
it just kind
And,
of
and
came
then
naturally.
when I moved to California with my father, it was my decision. It was a wonderful decision. He introduced me to his church youth group, which was part of a big district, and I loved it so much. I moved up in leadership. Pretty soon, I was the vice president. I
Mm,
organized a meeting of groups in Arizona, New Mexico, El Paso, and we went over and met with these people and started a new federation, the Desert Federation. I was also elected the chair of the LRY summer camp.
mm,
So we met once a month for 12 months and planned it. And then I was kind of in charge. I mean, I could
mm.
hire keynote speakers and things like that.
Wonderful.
So,
Wonderful.
and
Tell me about your years in the Navy. What were they like?
all my years in the Navy, well, uh, I think I was comfortable. When I lived with my mother, life was kind of loosey goosey. And when I
Hmm.
went to military school, then my life was very structured. We got up by the bugle, we went to sleep by the bugle. And so I think I was cut out to this Navy was very structured also.
Mm,
Um, so I joined the Navy right after the Cuban Missile Crisis through a high school classmate of mine,
mhm,
and I was in college. So it was 2 years before I actually went on active duty. And
mm,
by that time, I'd taken the test for E4 quartermaster, which is navigation. And even when I went on my first submarine, the chief quartermaster came to me and said, I'm hurting. If you'll stand watches with me, I'll make sure you get all the signatures you need. Aye, aye.
oh.
And then when I went on active duty to the captain, the chief quartermaster came to me and said, Hey, you're striking for quartermaster. I need you now. So I never went mess cooking. I was never in the deck gang,
Mm,
and immediately, and then it was Vietnam, and it was wartime and fast promotion. So 10 months later, I moved to another submarine. I was the leading white hat, which meant I've set the watch bill. I told people what
mm,
hours and days, they were running. And I always chose 4 to 8 because I wanted to see the sun come up and I wanted to see the sun come down.
very
And
cool.
then when I was a chief in 1972, I was invited on to the admiral staff that runs all the Atlantic Fleet submarines. And
Mm,
it kept me for 11 years because I never sat down. If I didn't have enough work at my front desk, I simply go down the hall and knock on doors and say, Hey, I've got extra time. Do you need help? And the last guy said, Get in here. That's your desk. He was producing a report every week about where all the Atlantic Fleet submarines were, whether they were in overhaul or up over the horizon or wherever they were.
Yeah.
and I did that for 2 weeks. And then they helped me make senior chief, E8
Hmm.
quartermaster, and then 3 years later they helped me make E9. When I was E8, I
Amazing.
was the only one in the country that was rated E8, and when I was E9, there were two of us, but I had top billing. So
Amazing.
yes,
What do you attribute your quick rise to? Your can-do
a quick
attitude?
gratitude. Oh yes, more so even now. I am so thankful, and like when I was the marshal that marched arts and sciences college students down to get their diplomas, I'd always talk to them ahead of time. And they said, "Oh, Dr. Leedom, thank you, thank you." I said, "Let me tell you something. I wouldn't be standing here if a whole bunch of people hadn't helped me out when I
Mm,
needed a hand. So you can't do this for me, but pass it on. When
yeah.
you get your class, remember that."
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Tell me about your career in academia. Did your work in the Navy kind of set the stage for that? You talked about the structure in the Navy. There's academic life is kind of structured as well, right?
Well, I help. Matter of fact, tomorrow night I'm going to the New School Montessori Action Auction. I helped start that school in September of 1970.
Hmm.
And while I was there, I attended Xavier University in Cincinnati. I got a master's degree in Montessori philosophy and methods. I got uh, Montessori certification for 3 to 6 year olds, and I got Ohio State teaching certificate
Mm,
for kindergarten through third grade. So I taught kindergarten, first grade for 2 years. I split them because the kindergartners were being dragged along. I didn't even have time to read children's literature, which I love.
mm,
So yeah, I taught kindergarten 5 more years. But then the political situation got kind of not so nice. Went
mm.
back in the Navy, was assistant navigator in fast attack, went up to the Arctic. I did all the plotting up there and got admiral citation for that. We came home with a bag of goodies, so we got a presidential unit citation.
Oh,
Um, well, after 2 years, then I came back to Cincinnati. I fell into a doctoral program in education, uh, curriculum and instruction, but it also had a strand of corporate training.
mm,
So I needed extra money. So I became the training consultant for the U.S. Shoe Corporation.
mm,
They were starting a Japanese quality tea module. I wrote the manuals for the workers. I wrote the manuals for the instructors. I oversaw the operation. I went to corporate whenever changes needed, and magically, whatever I asked for, I got.
mm.
So, um,
That's
yes.
wonderful. Wonderful. That's quite a good summary of your career there. Your book touches upon understanding the meaning of human life. What do you view as the meaning of human life?
Well, I think it has to do with having a very wide scope relationship with many kinds of people.
Mm,
I went to work in construction when I was 16. I learned to get along with all these different construction workers.
mhm,
Um, then when I was in the Navy, of course, I needed to get along with everybody from admirals on down. Then I worked for the Quakers, the American Friends Service Committee, over off and on for 5 years. We did home repairs for people that couldn't do it. We spent time in mental hospitals, sometimes sitting beside a patient who doesn't say a word. But
mm,
when you leave, they say, when is he coming back? And then
right.
I spent 6 weeks in San Quentin prison, one night a week, with self-reflexive therapy to help the incarcerated men learn to change their behavior so they stop doing prison time on the installment plan.
Amazing. Your
So I've
career
had
is so amazingly varied. I mean, from the Navy
yes,
to academia to working in the prison. You've
yeah,
done a lot in your years, that's for sure.
and I
It's,
still am.
and you still are. Tell us some of the things that you're up to nowadays.
Well, I am the chair of the Mensa Foundation for Excellence in Research Awards Committee. I
Mhm.
was a judge for them for 20 years, and then they made me chair. And I said, Shirley, I thought you liked me. So I've been the chair. This is my fourth year as the chair. We get research reports from all over the country. the world, actually. And we look to see, there is not one and only one definition to what is intelligence. So I
Hmm.
look for reports that add to our understanding of intelligence. For example, one of the reports I read this year, there was an experiment with gifted children. They would have them do a creative inductive project before they would introduce them to the topic so that the students would realize high concept load. They'd realize, oh, I don't know enough about that, and I need to learn more about that. And it makes them brighter students.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
It is exciting trying to understand intelligence, trying to gauge it in others, trying to redefine intelligence in a way.
Right,
And that's what you're doing there, which I think is wonderful. I
right. I,
wish,
I,
go ahead.
I also work for the American Legion. I've been doing they have a high school oratorical contest. I've been a judge there for 27 years.
Wonderful,
And
wonderful.
Ohio has Buckeye Boys State, which is 8 days in June when about 900 young men come, and it's all about patriotism and civic duty. The governor comes down and talks to us. The head Supreme Court comes and talks to us. Every night is a promotional speech.
Hmm.
I wish every young person, and we have a girls' state too,
Yeah,
so I love it.
that's great. The oratorical work, I got to thank you for. When I was a young man, that's what I studied. I did that after school. I had an Irish Christian brother who coached me in forensics, we called it, and
Okay,
we'd give impromptu and extemporaneous speeches and things like
right,
that, and declaration speeches which were prepared.
yeah,
So that's great training for young people. It gives you confidence, and I owe my career to it. So you're
yeah.
doing great work there.
When I was still teaching, I was asked to go to high school and do a Veterans Day program, which I
Mhm.
did. And then I gave it 3 times. And my own home district, Portsmouth West, I went in to see the superintendent because I taught his daughter. And I said, if you're having a Veterans Day program, I'd be glad to be your keynote speaker. He
Yeah.
said, well, Patric, I'm meeting with my principals next week. I'll call you. So he called me and said, yep, you're on. We're giving you 1,670 students and 70 faculty and staff. I said,
Wow.
okay, cool. I can do that.
Yep, exactly.
When my partner and I got there, we found out they had no plans for Veterans Day, but because I volunteered to be the keynote, they set one up,
Awesome.
and it's on videotape. And the choirs, the high school choir sang 3 or 4 hymns, the middle school choir sang 3 or 4 hymns, the elementary choir sang a few. Anyway,
That's great.
oh yeah,
One
and
person
and
can make a
I
difference. What are we going to
do
say?
Memorial Day speeches too.
What's that?
I do Memorial Day speeches,
Great, great.
yeah,
Yep,
to
our
veterans groups.
fallen soldiers need to be remembered, that's for sure. Let
Yes.
me ask you about the title of your book, I Wish to Live My Life Deliberately. What do you mean by that? What advice would you give to people who want to live their life deliberately?
Well, it comes directly from Henry David Thoreau.
Hmm.
Yes, so I take those words from him, and I think life is precious, and I think I learned early in life that there's today, but you don't know about tomorrow.
Right.
And I watched a young lady in the youth group. She was 14 and she wanted to be 21. And we were smoking. I mean, she could wear the makeup, the clothes. And I said, how sad she's giving up all her teen years just to be Miss Sophisticate. I made a vow, which I've kept my whole life. I never want to be a day older. I never want to be a day younger. Carpe diem, seize the day and make something good of it.
Yeah.
And I've been following that for over 60 years.
Yeah, well, that is great advice. And you
Yeah.
obviously do seize the day. You've seized a lot of days and you've made a difference. And this book documents a
Yes.
life of well-lived days. It's called I
Yes.
Wish to Live My Life Deliberately. It's a wonderful memoir. It's written by Dr. Patric Leedom, and it is very inspiring. It is a man who dared to dream, dared to make a difference, and he did. Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here today on Spotlight.
Thank you.
My pleasure. To the folks at home, I'm Logan Crawford, thanking you for your time this time. Until next time on Spotlight.